going around the state flat out, meeting concerned citizens wherever I go. I'm getting asked three things. A, what happened to all our good paying jobs in Connecticut? What are we going to do to bring them back? Two, health care. We have a health care crisis in this state and this country. What are we going to do about it? And three, let's look at our big city schools and what can we do to help our kids compete in the 21st century.
What do you think? That was you back in 2006.
Who was that young guy?
You look the same. Has anything changed at all in terms of those issues are still out there?
Oh, look, the good paying jobs, we haven't added really any net new jobs in the last 50 years. Shame on us. That's why we're in this problem. That's why you elected a business person. That's why I'm going all in to make sure we train people for these jobs. I have a transportation system that gets them to those jobs. And we have a budget that people have confidence is built to last.
You know, a lot of these companies like to hire millennials, so they want to be near train stations. Is that part of this transportation plan as you look at where these, choke points should be lightened up a little bit and unclogged, so to speak? Do you believe that will actually attract companies here because it'll be easy to get around our state?
Yeah, there's a global search for talent, so we got to do everything we can to keep those really smart millennials who come to Connecticut for college to stay here. And Dennis, one of the things they want is vibrant cities. So if I have New Haven and Bridgeport and Stamford and Hartford and Waterbury as transportation hubs with housing near there, bring those cities back to life, easy access to New York or to Boston or the other neighboring cities, that brings cities to life and that brings millennials.
Do you believe that people move out because of the congestion? Is that one of the reasons you think people move out of our state?
All I can tell you is I've made a point of reestablishing a close relationship with the business community, and they say it's an prime priority for them. It's tougher and tougher for people to get to work. They come there exhausted. Businesses have a hard time getting their clients to come. They go remotely now. I'm going to fix it.
You've been talking very closely, in fact, meeting with the governors of our neighboring states, Charlie Baker in Massachusetts, Gina Raimondo in Rhode Island, and Andrew Cuomo in New York. What have they told you about, because they all have tolls, what have they told you about what works and what doesn't?
Well, the relationship with Andrew Cuomo in New York was really important. He hadn't talked to Connecticut for many years. And what good does it do me if I can speed up the rail service to the New York border by half an hour and then we slow to a crawl? So he is committed to also do Metro North on the New York side so we can get down to Grand Central and eventually to Penn Station. Look, they're a little surprised that we've had as much pushback we have since user fees or tolls are so standard around not just the region, but really up and down the eastern seaboard right now. But they just say stay at it because there's nothing more important than the future of your state.
And when we talk about these tolls, they'll be gantries. They're not going to be the old-fashioned way where you have to stop and pay a toll. And actually, I believe you do. In some places of New York, you do have to do that still.
You don't have to, obviously, you don't stop at all. You get a 20% discount if you're a Connecticut person. Look, the big out-of-state tractor-trailer trucks are going to pay a lot more. There's no question about it. But they pay a lot less than they do going through New York, where they can be paying $50 to go over some of those bridges.
And when do you believe that this whole program, if approved by the legislature, would go into effect? When would this construction and these projects start? When would the tolls be implemented?
It's going to take a few years to get going. But the good news is we can get the loans before everything gets going. I can start the design. I can start the construction. You can see a difference on Metro North within 30 months, a dramatic difference, including high-speed Wi-Fi.
I promised my mother, Marilyn House, who lives in Massachusetts, I would ask you this question because she comes down every couple of months. And she comes in from Boston, the Boston area, and that rest area on I-84 right off this. We have one welcome center in Connecticut coming in from Boston. Yet coming in from New York, we've got these beautiful ones in Rowayton and Darien, I believe. Will there be a new one in Connecticut? She said this past weekend when she came down, the ladies' rooms were closed. The men's rooms were open.
What? Well, since your mom is asking, believe me, I'm not an expert on that rest stop, but I'm going to take a good hard look at it. That's terrible. Look, as you know, we cleaned up all the visitor centers. We got them open. This is how we welcome people to the state of Connecticut, and some of them fall in love with the state and stay.
But why aren't there like really nice ones on I-84, yet we see them all on I-95? Why is that highway sort of neglected in terms of, because there really aren't any, when you cross in Union, Connecticut, and you go all the way to Hartford, there isn't a single rest stop the whole way to pull over and get gas. There's just that one welcome center with some bathrooms that, as we know, are sometimes open, sometimes not. You have to get off the highway to get service, whereas in New York, you have as you head toward New York, you have more options.
You're more of an expert on the rest stops than I am. Let me get back to you on that. But if it's important to your mom, it's important to me.
Well, it's important to the state. Let's talk a little bit about, there's been talk maybe about improving ferry service or adding some ferry service to get people off the shoreline into New York. Is that a possibility?
Well, as your lead-in said, it's trains, planes, and cars.
Yeah, I didn't have the ferries in there, but I wanted to.
And didn't have the ferries, but they should have. Hey, look, first of all, let me start with the airports. We need an airport in South Central Connecticut. That would just open up that part of the state in a dramatic way. I hear from businesses all the time, if I can get from Tweed or Sikorsky down to Philadelphia or Washington, Chicago, I move my company here. It's that important. You asked about the ferry service, high-speed ferry service. It's still expensive, and it still has to be subsidized. So my personal feeling is not there yet. But I've gone on a ferry. I've heard their pitch. I've seen, how they do it with renewable power, a lot quieter, a little bit faster than they used to be. They're getting closer.
Are there ways to get Bradley Airport to be used more by some of these companies? Because if you live like in the town of Fairfield, it's kind of equidistant to drive to Bradley or LaGuardia, but many people think that LaGuardia is easier. How do you make Bradley sort of more of an attraction in terms of businesses using it?
Well, two things. I think that you will have a regional airport in South Central, Sikorsky or Tweed. That will be enormous to opening up that region. Absolutely. In terms of Bradley, as I said, it's growing right now really fast. There's a lot of development and opportunity there. We were talking just this morning about getting direct flights to London, opening up Europe, opening up the world to our airport, which would be New England's airport. And once you do that, you're going to see businesses follow.
Would more international flights change the business community in Connecticut?
I think it'd be helpful. I think the Dublin thing was pretty good, but it's not cheap. These guys like to be subsidized. I'm not a LaGuardia airport where people are paying a premium to get in there. But in terms of economic development, I think it's something we're going to look at. Air is going to be a big part of our future.
What about tourism? I know you've wanted to increase tourism. Is transportation going to help that? Improving transportation?
I mean, look down the Hudson Valley, where the Hudson line out of New York goes. They've opened up for tourism big time because kids don't need cars anymore. They can take the train there, get Uber to a brewery. It's really easy. So if we accelerate the rail service, interconnect that with some of our wine trails and walking trails, I think you could really see tourism be a much bigger piece of what we want to do.
A few months ago, we talked about this on this program with both Kevin Dillon of the airport and with you. There's been talk about renaming Bradley Airport to make it more appealing, maybe a catchier name that might, maybe an urban name or a city name that would attract people from across the country so people would know where it is. Where do you stand on that?
I think I'll leave that up to the airports. Obviously, Bradley, he was a veteran Connecticut guy, so there's a group of folks that feel deeply about that. When you go around the country and there's a flight into Hartford, it doesn't say Bradley, it says Hartford, so there's a little bit of a disconnect there. We could call it Connecticut International Airport or New England International Airport. That's why we paid Dillon the big bucks. Let's see what he has to say.
We're going to take a final timeout. We'll be back with more of the governor in just a moment. We have a couple of other questions for you. And we welcome you to follow this conversation on social media. We'd like to know what you're thinking about today's conversation with Governor Ned Lamont. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. And actually, so is he. So find him there.